Yes.
The time is now 5:01. Um, Good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining the March 11, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I am Dr. Felton Moss, Committee Chair and District 7 Board Member. It brings me great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting, and I look forward to our work tonight. For those unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. Ms. Adelaide, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Present.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Ms. Bullistrother,
Present.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Jackson. We have 4 present.
With a quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee meeting is now in order. The chair would like to inform the public that to accommodate our visitor speaking this evening, the order of the agenda will vary slightly. The committee will consider agenda item 4.3, policy 1100, community school, then 4.4, policy 9354, board members voucher reimbursement of expenses, before agenda item 3.0. Which is the legislative update. If there are no objections from the committee, the committee shall adopt the March 11th, 2025 meeting agenda as amended. There are no objections. The March 11th, 2025 meeting agenda is adopted as amended. At this time, we'll move to approval of the meeting minutes. If there are no corrections to the committee shall approve the February 25th, 2025 meeting minutes as distributed. If there being no corrections, the February 25th, 2025 meeting minutes are approved. We will now move to our public comment on agenda items. For public comment, registered public comment speakers, live, pre-recorded, or written. At this time, there are no comments this evening. Public comments can be live, written, or pre-recorded using video or audio. At this time, we will now consider agenda item policy 1100, community schools. And the chair recognizes Ms. Welsh for an overview of policy 1100, community schools. Ms. Welsh?
Good evening. So we have this evening our guest, Dr. Ingrid Horton, who is the director of the community schools. And our purpose in reviewing the policy to this evening is to consider the public comments that we received from PGCEA. So I thought that maybe the best thing to do would be to just go through each of the comments. And actually, I sent them to Cindy so she could post them. And I think Dr. Horton would probably be the best person to address those concerns. That way, then we can, as a committee, then you can make an informed decision about if there's any changes you think that should go to that policy. So Cindy, do you mind putting it up on the screen, please? So the first recommendation was had to do with the actual community school steering committee, and the recommendation was that to ensure strategic focus and broader stakeholder input, that they were recommending an agenda setting committee that would meet 2 weeks before the meetings. And then who should be in that meeting, the chair, the vice chair, and other designated committees. And then they also suggest an annual rotation of the chair and the vice chair positions on the steering committee. So I will let Dr. Horton give her guidance on this in terms of her experience in working with the community schools, as well as, directing the whole community school program. Dr. Horton.
Thank you. So, good evening and good afternoon, Dr. Moss and fellow board members. I appreciate you all providing me the opportunity as the Director of Community Schools in our wonderful district of Prince George's County Public Schools, the second largest community school in the state of Maryland. And what we say in our office, as well as to all of our schools, is we do community schools better than anyone in the state of Maryland. And we are the true community school. Because I'm not going to say what the other community school district is, but we are a full community school. We don't have anybody else help us do it better than we do. So I want to put that out and have it on record. So as far as the agenda setting committee, as well as the rotating leadership, if we look at the way we do community schools and the way we do it in Prince George's County, I am the Director of Community Schools, and according to our policy, as the Director of Community Schools, I am the chair of community schools. Community schools, the district does not dictate how we do community schools. We listen to the voice of our stakeholders, our students and our families, as well as our community members, but it's not a one size fits all. Community schools is based on how our stakeholders see or what they need. And so, we don't dictate our schools and how they do community schools, because our communities are all different. The needs of our communities are different. So therefore, our steering committee is different. I have a vice chair. Our vice chair, or my vice chair, is rotated every 2 years. The committee votes on that position every 2 years. So I don't know as far as PGCA and they're saying our stance, the union having a stance and dictating how that should be governed. We already have a governance policy in 1100 on how that should be done. And we do listen to our stakeholders as far as our needs assessment. Our needs assessment tells us what our stakeholders feel they need in our communities, how it is established, and we look at that. Not only that, my office, as well as our community school coordinators, are boots on the ground representing our schools, and we're out boots on the ground with our stakeholders, listening to the pulse of the community and bringing that back to our steering committee and sharing that information with them.
Thank you. Let's go to the next. We can do questions then afterwards as we get through the whole thing. So the next one is the focus, and comprehensive support services and accessibility. So the next recommendation was that these services should be offered year-round as wraparound services, and also that the services should be culturally relevant, reflecting the community's diversity and linguistic backgrounds, with bilingual and bicultural staffing as needed. So again, Dr. Horton, if you wouldn't mind sharing some information about that, please.
So we do have our community school coordinators are 12 months employees for PGCPS, as well as in our middle schools, we do hire school and community engagement advocates as a outsource from Department of Social Services that are available 12 months out of the year. We also utilize our Office of Interpreting and Translation Services. We work with our multilingual or our ELD office to help support us as well. When we look at materials, when we look at vendors, we're having a vendor fair upcoming. We look at the culturally relevant curriculum. We look at culturally relevant vendors to ensure that they depict what our students and families look like. And part of that vetting also comes through myself as well as Mr. Thompson. But our schools also look at vendors and resources that they find in their communities, and they share that during their network meetings as well.
Okay, thanks. The next one is focus on restorative justice and positive school climate. And I think this one's also is important because of how community schools are set up based on the needs assessment for each school. And that's what drives what is provided in the school. So their recommendation is promote restorative practices, that all the schools should be implementing restorative justice practices, and prioritizing relation building and accountability over punitive measures, and then also trauma-informed training, that all the educators and staff should receive regular professional development and trauma-informed approaches. Go ahead, Ms. Horton, and talk about what's currently happening in the schools.
So what's currently happening in our schools is we do have mental health clinicians in our schools that help foster and support trauma-informed care if needed. We work closely with our Office of Student Services to support that endeavor. But more importantly is that the schools, we don't dictate to the schools if trauma-informed care is needed. We do support the schools, and if the schools find that that is necessary, we have resources available to provide vendors that can support that endeavor, but we do not tell them what they need. They tell us what they need, and we guide them to the resources that can support all those endeavors for them. So again, a community school does not tell a school what they need. The schools find out from their students and parents what is needed, and then we assist them in finding the resources to help support anything they need to ensure that they're thriving in their communities.
Okay, the next one is inclusive family and community engagement. And the recommendation is that decision-making role for families and community members, that they should be actively involved in the decision-making for the community schools, hosting regular forums, town halls, workshops to gather feedback and discuss school initiatives, as well as for resource provision. Schools should offer workforce development, language literacy programs, and other support resources to families, empowering them to contribute to their children's educational experiences. So, go ahead, Dr.
Oh,
Horton.
I apologize. So the law says that they should and they must have a steering committee. The steering committee does comprise or should comprise of all the stakeholders, which would be families, which would be students, possibly if they're old enough to participate, staff members as well, and community members. But it may not look traditionally as what we're accustomed to. It may not be a PTA or a PTO meeting. It may be a parent cup of coffee. And at that parent cup of coffee, that's when we're finding out or they're making decisions. It may be at a family engagement event that these decisions are being made and they're being shared. So the schools are offering language classes to the families if that's what they say they need. They're offering all other kinds of health support, physical support, enrichment opportunities. So whatever the families and the students say they need, the schools are offering it to them and providing it in different ways. So we make it work and we make it happen for them in whatever they need, in whatever aspect they need it.
Okay, and then the next one is comprehensive needs and asset assessments, that each community school should conduct annual needs and asset assessments. And that should include the 75 to 100% participation of student families and staff. And then the assessments should collect quantitative and qualitative data, including focus groups, interviews, listening groups, which you just said you already do, and then transparent reporting and budget accountability. So go ahead and talk about that too.
So the needs assessment is conducted every 3 years by our district. So we do that as a district. And then when they first become a community school, the needs assessment is conducted. But that doesn't mean an evaluation is not occurring. When we have family engagement opportunities, an evaluation is conducted at that time. And it could be quantitative or qualitative. It could be happening at arrival when the community school coordinators or the administrator or any staff member is having informal conversations with families. So if we're talking about 75% or 100% participation, we would like 75% or 100% participation, but our families' needs are different. So what we strive and what we try to do is provide opportunities, and we gather that and we take that data and we move forward. Transparent reporting, nothing is a secret for us. So whatever data, whatever information that is needed, we provide it to our students, our families, and our communities.
I think we have one more. Operational norms, job descriptions, and evaluation metrics for community roles. And then just basically all of that related to each of these different specific jobs and their roles in the job descriptions. So that you follow through, Dr. Horton.
So the community school liaison position is a PGCEA stipend that was created at the onset of the community school community school initiative. So that is something that is a union position and a union negotiated agreement. So that's something that would have to be discussed during negotiations. The job descriptions are open and they're visible for anyone who's applying for a job. So that's not something that is hidden or not a secret. We're always looking at when we discuss the job with our community school coordinators, as well as when we're looking at candidates, how it does tie into the mission vision of Prince George's County Public Schools, as well as the Office of Community Schools. A dedicated webpage for family engagement. That would have to, in my opinion, be in collaboration with family engagement, maybe with other departments here in the system. Our office is small but mighty, but it would be a collaborative effort on other offices as well to make that occur.
So I think that was all the recommendations, and this is information about those recommendations. So if there's questions or whatever.
We'll recognize Board Member Briggs and then Board Member Walker.
Hey, thanks so much, Chair Moss. Dr. Horton, first, thanks for joining. As I say, good to see you. I wanted to I had actually a specific question before I get into other ones about the 3-year review. And if you could just share more about why that happens, because I know in the current policy, it says that the community school coordinator will review the annual plan at least annually. And to me, that felt like, or I'm sorry, at least every 3 years. But to me, it felt like maybe an annual review would be good. But if you could just share more about how it works right now, and if you have any insights on whether annual versus 3 years is a good thing.
So by law, we as a district conduct a community school needs assessment every 3 years. We're responsible for that every 3 years as a district. So the first year you become a community school, you conduct a needs assessment, and it's every 3 years after that. So that's what we're by law required to do. The community school coordinators, in between that time, we do encourage them to always look at their quantitative data as well as their qualitative data to determine the needs of their students and families. So in between those times, we're always asking them to look at their data and determine what it is their students and families need to thrive. So if you're looking at your data and you're seeing that there are shifts or there are things that need to be done differently, what are you doing to move the needle to ensuring that's happening? So we do trainings for them during their network trainings once a month, as well as the community school specialists are going out to them on a frequent basis to help support that endeavor as well.
So, and I just also, I guess more specifically with the community school coordinator, it says at least every 3 years they'll review the implementation plan. From your kind of expert view and opinion, do you think that us changing the language from at least to actually requiring an annual review would be helpful? Is there any kind of downturn to not making it annually versus every 3 years? I just feel like a lot could be missed if they are only doing it once every 3 years.
So you're saying a district needs assessment every 3 years? I'm trying to get clarity from you.
Yeah. So
we do a district needs assessment, which we're pushing out, and it goes to applied research where we're looking at that. We send it out to everyone in multiple languages. And then when we send it out in multiple languages, applied research analyzes that data and sends it back to the school for them to look at. But that doesn't mean in between the school can't do their own type of needs assessment.
I may have one more round, but thank you for that.
Board Member Walker.
Yes, excellent. Hey, Dr. Horton, I am a fan of community schools, so excited to see you here. Sorry, I have 3 screens. My face is like everywhere, but just know I'm talking directly to you. Hey, listen, when I was taking a look at PGCEA's recommendations, I really, as you went through them, recognized that a lot of them are already seated deeply within our own policy. And I was just wondering, as you take a look at these, is there anything that you would leverage for greater detail? I know for overall policy, we want to kind of keep it broad so we don't put ourselves into a net, but when you talk about restorative practices or trauma-informed trainings, I know we don't want to prescribe those because it is based per school or per incident. I'm wondering if we say, what your thoughts are if we say, when you have the trainings, to include but not limited to restorative practices or trauma-informed training. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that. It's not anything necessary from my perspective, but I can see, I'm just reading here just to see where they found gaps, because I didn't necessarily fill the gaps as we went through it and as I did, and you talked about it, but I guess from somebody looking on, just taking a look without having context, they can feel as though there's some things lacking. And I just wanted to get your thoughts around that.
So we do have the restorative justice coordinator that serves on my committee. And so she's available to provide support to the committee if that is a question or if that does come up, and to provide resources and guidance. So if we see that or if we hear that, then we can steer the school as well as the community to resources, as well as to provide training and professional development. So we have a good foundation, but I do want to answer your question. If we had to think about the policy, the gap that I do see in the policy is we don't have a representative as far as leadership. And I mean leadership from an administrator, because what we find in the community school strategy is that if there's not inclusive leadership from an administrator, if the administrator is not buying into the community school strategy, then it's very difficult for it to be implemented. So if we have an administrator on the community school steering committee, then they can hear what's happening, what's going on, and bring that back to their colleagues. That would be very instrumental to us. That's the gap for me that I see.
Perfect. I'll come back for a second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boozer Strother.
Yeah, thank you so much, and great to see you, Dr. Williams Horton. I've always appreciated my time serving on the district steering committee. And this, I think one thing that happens is when we're talking about steering committees, we could be thinking of the district level one or the school-based. And I know, so I'm going to try to be really clear when I talk about each, because it is an area that I'm also really, interested in making sure the school base feels strong and known and connected to the internal and external community. For the committee members for your district steering committee, I agree with you about administrator. I was a board liaison and definitely understand what gap you're saying exists. I just have a small edit here that it says an elected or appointed member of the board, and now we're fully elected. So I just give that to Ms. Welsh around the appointed word. And I think for, one of my interest around school-based steering committees is always that they feel strong and valuable and can do their work. And I do think some more visibility could help with that. I would love to see everyone credited, publicly on the website of the service that they're doing. I know some schools expanded their parent section of their websites to really be about the community schools parent center. And you could see the terminology and you could see the community schools coordinator, there. It would be great to know who serves on the committee, because I've talked to, say, parent leaders otherwise, say, like, as you noted, sometimes, with the active PTOs, that they don't know who they're in terms of community because of limited visibility, for whatever reason, some limited visibility. And I imagine every school would have a different story around that. I just want to say, as a board member, that, whatever we can do to support that is what I'm very interested in, and especially with any changes to, the community schools coming out of the legislative session. And I think you know, those of us on this committee have said the terms community schools probably more times in in a short period of time than ever. This is our focus, the funding for community schools. So thank you for all your work.
Looks like we're going to go to a second round. And I believe this second round would start with Board Member Walker, and then it would go to Board Member Briggs.
No, it's opposite. It goes to Briggs first, then me.
All right, I'm
Thank
wrong.
you. No worries. Thank you.
Briggs.
Okay. So Dr. Horton, really quickly. So I read through the policy beforehand. I didn't see the community schools liaison in there. And I'm not 100% certain that I understand what the recommendation was from PGCEA. Can you just share more about what the liaison does versus a coordinator?
So the community school coordinator is actually a full-time employee that actually implements, monitors, supports the community school strategy 12 months out of the year. The community school liaison is like, if you think about an octopus, the liaison is one of the tentacles. So they have to be a PGCEA employee, and they are supporting the community school coordinator in implementing the strategy. So they have to be a PGCE member, and they may serve on the steering committee. They may be supporting family engagement events. They may be helping with the needs assessment, but it would have to be after their work hours. It cannot be during their work day. So they have to log in so many hours, and then they get a stipend for doing their work after I'll start gathering their data or getting who the members are, and they get a stipend. So they'll get paid at the end of the year for the time that they've done. But that's what they do. So they're actually learning. And some of the community school liaisons have become community school coordinators in the end. So I see it as an opportunity to observe future community school coordinators and help them understand the strategy and support the work that we're doing.
Got it. That's great. That's really helpful. And then I guess my last piece was that I know you said something about the union pays for the stipend. Is that what it was, or?
It's a PGCEA employee. So yes.
Okay, got it. But they
They
negotiate.
have to be a PGCEA member in order to receive the stipend.
I see.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Just a point of clarification, the position is currently not written in the board policy. And to Board Member Briggs's question again, the actual stipend is paid for out of community schools funding, or is it paid for from PGCEA to them?
So how it's really paid for is we pay for it out of, let me clarify. So thank you, Dr. Moss, Board Member Moss. It is actually paid for out of their community school funds. We have an allocation out of their community school funds. So thank you I should have clarified that. So thank you for backtracking for me on that. We put that aside out of their community school funds to pay for that liaison position.
I had like 30 seconds left. I just forfeited that time, but I just wanted to say, to be clear, so they're paid for out of the community schools fund, but is PGCEA saying something different? Like, are they saying it should be paid for in a different way?
They're saying that they should have, like, for example, they should have time out of class to implement the strategy and support the strategy. That's like one of their recommendations. Instead of them doing it before school or after school, they should have time allocated. So maybe like a substitute time or substitute pay, or to implement the strategy instead of doing it after school or before school.
Okay, because of overtime, because they're working more hours.
Yes.
Board Member Walker?
Yes, first, I wanted to double back on something that was said, but before that, I see inside the policy, I just wanted to make sure you're getting the board support you need. So, Board Member Boozer Strother already hit on the appointed and elected, but it looks like you should have 2 people from the board according to this policy. Wanted to just ask you if you can tell us, do you have the support you need, or is that something that we need to take back to press? That's a quick one, and then I'll come back to that one.
Yes, we need one more member. We did have two members, so thank you, Board Member Briggs, for being a part of that. But we're minus 1 member, so we do need another member on our committee. Thank you.
And so that's something that I guess our chair can take back to the chair to let him know that we need support in that area there. And then the other piece that I wanted to, oh man, I think I lost it. But the other piece I think I wanted to tap into was about just staffing in general. That wasn't it, but I will. The support that we need for our schools. So you said, for instance, I'm going to be a proponent of adding the wording in, Ms. Welsh, to make sure that we have an administrator there. I mean, our schools are the ones who ask for community schools. We're the ones advocating for community schools. So I too believe that someone from the school should be on that board. I think that's what you were asking, right, Dr. Horton? Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so let's just make sure we can get that in there. They should play a part in that. They asked for it and our community needs it. So we want them to be a core focus of that. All right, thank you. And if there's anything else that needs to be added that you wanted to put on the line right now for us to have Ms. Welsh add for us to vote on, then now's the time. You got a whole minute.
Just a clarifying question, the recommendation from PGCEA around time allocation, are you recommending that change or not as we craft a policy? I don't know if that's really in our purview with this existing policy anyway. Okay, I got you, Dr. Horton. Dr. Boozer-Strother.
I'm not a doctor.
But wait, she had like a minute, but maybe less now, in order just to talk if there was anything she wanted us to consider adding into the policy. Is that okay for her to answer, Dr. Moss?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't intend to cut you off.
No, I just want the administrator to be a part of it. Like I said, across the nation, it's vital to have administrative support regarding the implementation of the community school strategy. So the community school coordinator and the administrator working together to execute and implement and monitor that strategy is so strong. And if it's strong, then we can ensure that we have strong communities. So I appreciate that.
All right, I think I'm good now. Board member Boozer-Strother, who I gave a doctor to a few minutes ago, but
Thank you.
you're breaking up a good bit, Board member Boozer-Strother.
So I wanted to check in. I think I ask you this question every year when I get a chance. All right.
Oh no.
Am I back in? I'm
You're back
frozen.
now.
I'll come
You're
back.
now. And then we lost her altogether. Colleagues, do you all have anything else while we wait on Board member Boozer-Strother?
Could I ask one question?
Absolutely.
When you're saying administrator, Dr. Horton, are you saying administrator to the overall steering committee for the district steering committee? One principal.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I had it right.
Board member Briggs, did you want to say something while Board member Boozer-Strother is getting? There we go. Board member Boozer-Strother, we're waiting for you.
Sorry, I did on that one point. I can come back to it based on what Robin just said.
Okay. Board member Boozer-Strother.
Yeah, thanks. So I know I ask you this every year just in case. Are any schools that are not Blueprint funded community schools adopting the model and doing this without Blueprint funding now? Like that they are claiming all the models, a steering committee, a needs assessment, but they don't actually have the Blueprint for Maryland's future funding.
To be honest, board member Boozer-Strother, I have 448 of them right now. So I'm keeping up with 148. I'm the old lady in the shoe. So I haven't heard of the others right now, but I'm sure that there are. But I will tell you what's really happening. I have schools contacting us and asking us, what can we do to be community schools? And we are telling them, you are already a community school if you're doing this, and this. So it's not about funding. It's about how are you already helping your communities and sustaining your communities without funding. So we're flipping it with them about funding and talking about how are you utilizing your partnerships? How are you utilizing your community members to help your students if you're in this situation? And then we're guiding them to the resources and helping them and have those conversations with them. So I will tell you the conversations are happening that way to help them think differently. And they're like, oh, so it's not about funding. we're like, no, it's not about funding. It's about sustainability without funding. And this is how you do it. So that's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like the answer is yes, that this strategy is attractive to our schools that are not
It's
at
very,
at 70% or 65% concentration of poverty, and they are and we're doing internal systems change and learning through this.
yeah.
Okay.
It just
And
happened.
then,
It's, I didn't mean to cut you off. It happened today.
okay. Yeah, I was I knew there'd be a point where that this would probably, the answer would be yes, and I think it doesn't surprise me we've reached that point. So, but for us as a board, right now we're fighting just to keep going to the 55% concentration of poverty funded community schools through the state and local chairs. We could easily argue that we should keep going to at least 45% because of our participation in farms. So just so you know, this board does have a funding, an actual law and funding vision, presuming we're fighting just to save this, right? Like, I mean, everyone knows what fight we're in right now. So, but we definitely are a voice to continue to get funding for your community schools. That would be frankly, nearly all of the PGCPS schools. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I want to make sure we wrap this up. I know we have a couple of more items, but do we need to clarify anything else to Ms. Welsh before we proceed?
I just had one thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, the question on the principal sitting there, I just wondered, do we have to be as prescriptive to say it should be a rotating one? It's a year-long appointment or election? What are we doing here for that principal?
I'm glad you asked that question, Board Member Walker, because here's my thinking. If we have an administrator, I think we need to have representation from each level because
Mhm.
each level is different in their thinking. We need elementary, middle, and high. And then the K-8 and charter work differently too. So how does that work? Do we need representation from all of those levels, or how do we want to work? Or secondary and elementary? How do we want to work that? Have one from each one of those levels, say secondary and elementary, and then charter. That would be 3.
Yeah, I would say, since I have a little bit more time, less is best to get you the perspective that you need. And then as we continue to roll out, see what that looks like. Right now, there's a gap of 0. And, we do have shortage on teachers and administrators. And so still to get you that, I would like to see the latter. Recco? If you're good with that, then we can, if this committee's good with that and you're good with it, we can have Ms. Welsh be clear when she leaves. What you think? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Board members?
Yeah, I would support an elementary, a secondary, and a charter one. If Dr. Horton thinks that's good.
Right now I have 0. I'm taking it.
All right, got you. All right, well, the question is, shall the committee recommend, oh, wow, let me make sure I have the right policy number. The question is, Board Member Briggs?
You can finish the motion and then I'll.
The question is, shall the committee recommend policy 1100, community schools, to the policy sponsor for revision and approval? Any discussion? Board Member Briggs.
Yeah, I know normally we have like a discussion with the administrative representative, and then we'll have like an actual set of recommendations to Mrs. Welsh. So I did want to get those over. But I do really appreciate hearing Dr. Ingrid Horton share. But not sure if we're moving to that time or if we're voting on it right now to move forward.
This is where you would make those during this discussion phase if you want to lay those out.
Okay. Well, I did have a few things, Mrs. Welsh, that I wanted to see changed in there. So for the definition for community schools, and it says, it talks about wraparound supports. I did think that those could be bolstered a bit, and I actually thought that in the policy, I think from like underneath the vision, the dental, and the hearing, there's like a set of recommendations, 8 to 12, that feel like they're actually more wraparound supports. I don't know if you want to just take a second look at that as you're editing, but those feel like those might be wraparound supports versus those being in that section. And then I did like the focus on kind of social emotional learning, some of the updates to language that we're hearing more, um, you know, in schools and in school communities around supporting students. So social emotional, mental health supports, things like that I'm sure our schools are already doing. And for section 5, I did want to make sure that we changed it from CEO to superintendent, because it says that there. And I personally liked some of the recommendations coming from PGCEA. So, I asked the question to Dr. Horton around like whether we should change it to kind of an annual versus a 3 years. And I definitely get the rationale behind like one, that there's like a law. I'm not sure if we cited that law, by the way, in the policy, but there's a law that we're referencing for the 3 years. But, I did want to just maybe see if you could look into that piece, Mrs. Welsh, around kind of best practices that may exist around the 3 year versus the annual, just so that we can have like other considerations, because that may be helpful to have as like a reference. And those are my pieces that I had. Do you have any questions?
So I just want to share that I have added revisions based on the law that got passed last year that added more requirements, and it does talk specifically about the needs assessment. It gives a little bit more of a description about how that process is, as well as the fact that it should be reviewed at least, it says that from the law, it says review the implementation plan at least once every 3 years. So that doesn't necessarily say you need to do a needs assessment, but you could look at the implementation plan and I'm guessing though that schools probably do this, is that they look at their plan and say, is this still valid, or has anything changed in the past year that causes us to want to relook at that? Because everything they do, all the funding you get for wraparound services and everything, it's based on this needs assessment. So you want to ensure that, you're addressing whatever the needs are for that school. But that comes directly from the law.
Okay.
And there were new additions that came in last year when that bill was passed.
That's helpful. I didn't know. I didn't see it cited there. So that lets me know, because obviously that's static. They can change. So that's helpful to know that that's one thing. But the other ones I would still just kind of recommend, but appreciate that. And of course, like if you have questions, then let me know around what I meant by that. But those are my suggestions.
I will tell you that the community school, the definition of community school, again, that's driven by law. And in the bill that passed last year, they did add more language into that. And that's why I have it in this version.
Okay, got it. So that's all based on law. Okay, great.
Okay.
Colleagues, does anyone else have anything that we've not laid out already that we want to see? Okay, Board Member Walker.
Yeah, this will be real quick. I know, I don't know if this exercise that Mr. Briggs asked for is in depth or comprehensive or looking, before we get to the next meeting. I'm not sure, but I do have concerns of us reducing it less than the 3 years. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the reason is because what I think I heard Dr. Horton say is that it's a very comprehensive needs assessment that takes place. It's not just a survey. And with that, I think that's why the law is with the no less than 3, or whatever it was, the recommendation, a minimum of 3. And so if there's something that we want to, maybe not the comprehensive that it is that you're looking for, because it is so comprehensive, which is how they do their plan, but maybe that they just make sure that they take a look at their work plan, for instance, of how they're going to execute their work annually, or their work plan, something around that. I don't know if that meets your needs. What gap are you trying to solve for, Mr. Briggs? Maybe that'll help Ms.
No,
Welsh.
I think Mrs. Welsh literally, when she said it's the law says it, really for me, there's no longer debate, because that's what the law says. So that would be like going to the state legislators, as to get them to change it. So for me, there's nothing more
Oh, perfect. I thought you said I still want you to go back. Okay, my bad. Thank you.
I do want to flag the board members. This policy will come to us again. We are recommending it to Robin to work on. We will see it in our next meeting again. So I do want to flag that. Any other technical questions so that we might get through this?
Okay.
All right, Ms. Adelaide, could you please take a roll call vote?
Dr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Booth Strutter,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 1100 community schools will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision. Thank you so much, Dr. Horton, for joining us this evening, and thank you for your incredible work. This committee will continue fighting for community schools, and thank you for being a great example for the rest of the state.
No problem. Thank you. We thank you for your support and we look forward to representing PGCPS. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, Dr. Horton, good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Policy 9354, which is board members voucher reimbursement of expenses. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh for an overview of policy 9354, board members voucher reimbursement of expenses.
So with that policy, and just as a reminder, that policy number will be changed to 8103 so that it's in your internal policies. But one of the questions that came, oh, Cindy, do you mind putting it up on the screen, please? So if you scroll down to this page 2 under standards. So one of the questions came up is number C, which had to do with if a board member has any doubt about whether the expenditure is allowable, and this is prior, it's a pre-approval, then they should. The question was, shouldn't they contact internal audit? So I did speak with internal audit, and they said no, that you would not contact them because if they're telling you how that something's approved or isn't approved, or you should do this or that, then when they go in to audit the expenditures, they'll be auditing their work. So they can't be up front doing this when the reality is they're really after the fact auditing what has occurred. So what I did put in there was that they would get the approval would be that I put whether, because you're trying to find whether a proposed expenditure, this is just for clarity, that obtain a guidance, because I don't know that at this point so the recommendation was that you should go to the director of the board office. So it's not the director's job to necessarily approve your expenditures, but certainly give you guidance about the expenditures. So I changed the language to a proposed expenditure shall obtain guidance from I can't hold on a second. Let me see if I can get rid of this thing. There we go. Expenditures allowable. The board member shall obtain a guidance about the expenditure from the director of the board office. So if you're good with that, that would be good. And then if you scroll down, I think the next question had to do, it came back to this whole issue. I'm going to take you down to page 3 on page number 24. And it was about this whole issue of the distributing the flyers, mailers, and then the question came up, you did ask to have non-recurring events put in there, so I did. And then I did again talk to internal audit about the 45 days for primary and general elections, if that should even be there. And her strong feeling was that it should be for any political activity, anytime, that it's that if there's, because it doesn't necessarily mean have to be within that time frame, that there should be no connection to any type of political activity when you're talking about reimbursement of expenses. So I put that language, I basically took out I did put the non-recurring in, but took out the 45 days of primary of the primary election. So there's no restrictions there. It's whenever. And the green is like the new language because the other stuff was there before. And then the next one, that it is internal audit that does audit the expenditures. So they're looking at those expenditures. As far as the mileage, that was the next area. And we're all over the place on that because I have so internal audit, so the problem is we probably need a tax attorney to dissect the IRS code, because the issues come down to where is your major place of business, and and ultimately is it the Board of Ed or is it your home? And I have spoken with both internal audit, with our chief financial officer, and with OGC, and did also then, and I'll let him talk if he's still there, your board's attorney. And at this point, we don't have clarity on that. So I don't know if Arthur, if you're still on the line, if you want to jump in here.
Hey,
Yes,
can you have him to speak to both questions that we have in the interest?
Sure, go right ahead. That's fine.
yeah, thank you. And I do apologize that I do have a hearing at 6 o'clock. So that's why I appreciate Mr. Chairman for moving this matter up. I agree with Ms. Welch with reference to the IRS code. It's not that clear, but it seems based on the case law that they refer to, that if the board member legitimately maintains their principal place of business at home and has no other fixed location, then it would be something that mileage can be taken from that point. But since the SASSA building is probably the principal place of business, it's arguably that's really the base in which the mileage should be taken from. But again, it's not clear, because they do allow for mileage to be taken from home. There was a case that we saw. I'm not sure it's on point, but they're talking about a police officer. Once he she leaves their house and their vehicle and gone, then mileage can be accumulated because they are doing work. But even though they have a precinct, but that was a little different situation. And so again, it's not clear, and I understand that it's been determined various ways within the agency, but if I were to opine, it would be that conservatively, and I'm not a tax attorney, it would be the principal place of business being SASSA for the mileage. And then the other issue, and again, I have placed this in writing, and we'll put it in writing if you like, with reference to the reimbursement of compensation for board members. Section 3-1003 of the Maryland Education Code sets your salary as to how much money, and people are getting a raise here, so well deserved. But it also puts a cap on annual allowances for $7,000 for incidentals, for travel and expenses. And that cap seems to be fairly, well, it doesn't seem, it is fairly specific in the code. And so any compensation or reimbursement beyond that would have to fall under a category that is allowable under the code, not allowable under a policy of the board, not necessarily allowable under the handbook, but allowable under the law. And the section 3-1003 seems to be fairly specific. However, the statute says that you will be entitled to what's normally provided to other employees in the school system, but they specifically listed things like health insurance. And then the code does require you to participate in conferences and all. But the question becomes whether the conferences and all could be paid or reimbursed beyond that $7,000 cap. And as I suggested, in a email to the chairman at the time who asked, for your sake as a representative of the board, we need to be conservative in our opinion, and that the 7,000 caps should rule the day. But I would highly recommend a letter to the Attorney General for an interpretation of the statute, so that to see if there is any wiggle room or flexibility in that determination, because again, it can be interpreted another way, but based on the actual language of the statute, it seems to have a hard cap at $7,000.
Attorney Hoy, I appreciate you yielding your expert counsel here. I know you have to run, but colleagues, I thought it might be fitting to table this item until we can get additional guidance. I wouldn't want us to move on an item without having that expert opinion from the Attorney General around this. Partly because this practice has been in place predating many of us on the board, and so I just think we need to get clear about it and not do anything illegal. That's my recommendation tonight. So not to go too far in the weeds on this is what I wanted to offer us. Board Member Walker, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Absolutely. I'll vote to postpone it until we get some expert opinions on this. I guess the only thing I just want board members to remember is that we might have to then go back and visit, depending on what the outcome is, the amendment that I put through for $500 minus $500 per budgeted line item to take it to $6,500. So I think some of what I'm hearing in between the lines is that this line item would not only include the things that we leverage it for, which are clearly outlined, but will also include the required by law trainings, professional trainings that we also have to get throughout the course of the year. With that, I would want to figure out how I can take back the amendment. And I hate to do that, but it was also driven by not knowing where we might have to go, depending on what comes back from the Attorney General. That's just a heads up for us, not in this policy, but just in general for us to think through minus $500.
Yeah, I've also got to turn this over to Board Member Briggs, as I have another meeting I have to urgently get at. But Board Member Boozer Strother, I will hang on to be able to vote on this item. But I want to make sure we get Board Member Boozer Strother in.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I just want to make sure the Attorney General knows that we do not have actual, the 10 desks or offices, like that we are truly remote employees. And I mean, I just have to bring up again that the further away you live from Sasser, you as a board member have an opportunity to make a big profit off your mileage. I know I would be starting with many, many miles before I left my door to go a mile to a school in my district. So I do think there's some serious implications around this. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. I apologize I have to run, but thank you.
Okay.
So is he pulling together the Attorney General letter? What's the clarity?
Yeah,
Somebody can wrap it up.
Yeah, we would need to have our attorney to be able to do it. So it would Attorney Horn would be pulling that together.
And I will say from past experience of trying to get Attorney General opinions on different things, it would have to, though, he would, and we did discuss this, he would have to do it and then go under the chairs of the board's signature.
Absolutely. So the question is, shall the committee table policy 9354 board members voucher reimbursement of expenses to the should we table it? There's no additional discussion. Ms. Adlai, will you call the roll?
There is. Can you amend that to also say the piece about the Attorney General? Thanks.
Absolutely. I accept it.
Also, you can amend it. So table is actually different from postpone. So I think you're just supposed to say postpone, which is what you said initially.
All right, I'll say it completely over again. I was wrong twice. Uh, shall the committee postpone policy 9354 board members voucher reimbursement of expenses to and instruct the attorney to craft a letter to the Attorney General in response to the questions from the committee members? Think I got it right?
I think so.
All right. Miss Adelaide, will you call the roll?
Dr. Morse,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Willis-Strader,
Aye.
Ms. Walker.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 9354 board member voucher reimbursement is postponed pending information from the Attorney General. I'm now going to turn it over to Vice Chair Briggs for item 3.0.
Great. All right, thanks so much. So the chair recognizes Mrs. Welsh for the legislative update. Thank you, Mrs. Welsh.
So as far as the legislative update, right now, there's not a lot happening because the crossover is coming and then lots of things will be happening. But right this moment, everyone's sort of holding still. I will say though that as far as House Bill 504, that'll be moving into the Senate. And today in a meeting that I was on, this was a BZAM meeting, they said that what came out was that the Senate is very focused on long-term affordability. And because of that, there is a possibility that all the amendments that were made to the bill could possibly be undone when it hits the Senate. So people are just waiting to see what's going to be happening for the future in terms of that funding. There is a provision though in the bill that that they made a change in it. So the bill originally allowed for certain, I think 50% to go to administrative costs, the community schools funding to go to central office, like administrative costs to administrate the community schools. And they specifically when they were making their amendment, they specifically put in language that says, you may not use that money for that purpose. So there is a question about whether or not there will be impact for our school system. And unfortunately, I have contacted Ms. Howe, and I think she's been extremely busy. I know today she was in interviews all day, and yesterday she had a county thing. So I have not heard back from her yet to find out what the impact is for us on that change in language, because that might be something that we would want to be, making, giving testimony or whatever to say we're not in favor of that amendment. But I think it's going to be critically important to watch to see what just happens with the amendment. I mean, with that bill as it progresses, when it makes the switch over to the Senate, because there could be, some changes. I will say that as far as for the MSDE picking up like all this stuff with recruitment and everything, that that has been, a lot of that has been squashed in the bill, at least right now as amended. And most school systems are like, we don't want MSDE, recruiting our teachers. This is our job. Let us do the recruitment. Don't tell us to apply for a grant to get some money for this, because first of all, every time you tell us to apply for a grant, that's a heck of a lot of extra work for us, which is an administrative burden, which you're talking about staff time used to have to not only do all the paperwork to apply for it, as well as to monitor and manage the grants. So that was a positive thing to move it out. There is also a lot of concern related to their leadership training because of the fact that they want to keep pulling principals out to come in and get all this training. And number one, and this again came up today, where superintendent said, there's no way, we can't afford to let all our principals go and get all this training. We need our principals in our schools. So that is one that they're very strongly will be advocating against. And I think there's I think a lot of effort out there right now to maybe limit MSDE's purview over all these different areas and not, build up their own little university or college in terms of all the things that they're planning to provide, because the impact ultimately will be negative for the schools if you're pulling staff from our schools. So it's one of those things we just need to keep our eyes open and watch to see what the next step is for it. There are a lot of people are paying a lot of close attention to it, so we should be getting, information shortly as it progresses. And there are minimal number of bills that there's some hearings next week, but it's right now it's sort of dead. So, but I did want to talk a couple of minutes because I know Dr. Moss had asked about what's happening for Advocacy Day. And I did the agenda. Cindy, can you post it so we can the public can see it also? So we have two different classes coming in that will be their CTE programs that are students from their policy and law program. And quite honestly, I read emails from the teachers and they're very excited about this. This is like they just feel like this is an excellent opportunity for their students because it's right in line with what's in their educational programs for those students. And of course, the focus will be on funding for us and support for school construction. So if you can scroll down, they'll be leaving. They're going to be arriving by like 8 in the morning, and they'll have a welcoming opening remarks. To Mr. House will be there, and hopefully Mr. Jackson. And of course, there'll be conversations about school instruction and how important that is, what the ongoing challenges are for our school system, as well as how important it is for us to receive additional funding and support. And then there will also be a conversation about the legislative process work and importance in their advocacy efforts. So in all of this, although the students are advocating for Prince George's County Public Schools and our construction needs and everything, this is considered a field trip for them. So it is an educational experience for them in terms of even the whole process. And then there'll be legislative meetings where they'll have the opportunity to meet with different legislators. And Shelby McRae in my office is working to get all this set up for them so that they can meet with the different legislators and talk to them and urge them to prioritize school construction. And then they'll have lunch and networking, which will be right after that. If you'll scroll down, Cindy, from 10:30 to 11:30. And again, they'll have some opportunity to talk to legislators. They'll be informal, but it still will be, a good experience for them. And then after that, if you just go back up, Cindy, for a second, then they'll have there's going to be a rally and a press conference. So everyone will get together and, have the conversation. The legislators, hopefully too, will be there so that we can get some photo ops. And then there will be a tour. We were able to get a tour set up with the whole legislative area and where they're going. If you scroll down a minute, Cindy, let me just see if there's anything else there. Okay, and so what was very nice is, and this is a tour that is put on in Annapolis regularly, but they have lots of different packets of learning materials and stuff, which the teachers, again, were very excited about and are going to be reviewing with the students so they're well prepared for their trip up to Annapolis. And then, of course, there'll be closing remarks. So it's pretty fast and furious, but I think it'll be quite impressive for our legislators to have our students there talking to them about this, as well as I think it'll be an excellent learning experience for the students. So
All right. Oh, thank you so much. Are you finished, Mrs. Welch?
I am, yes.
All right, thank you so much. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Okay, I see Board Member Boozer Strother.
Well, one, I just want to say that I really like this plan that came together, and I do think bringing our students into school construction and maintenance funding advocacy is a really important. So thank you to everyone. I'm sorry that I'll be out of town and cannot be there to support. I did just want to ask is this our only agenda item for legislative? Because Chair Moss was going to bring up for us HB 493, Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. I have an update on that.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Can I just say one thing real quick? I want to give credit where credit's due. And it was, I think the work, Shelby McRae put the whole plan together, who's in my office, as well as Roderick Adams worked to get all the students and get together and, get all that coordinated. So I didn't do anything, just to be fair. So they were the ones who did all the work for this. But no, we can absolutely talk about that bill.
Mr. Board Member Briggs, Vice Chair Briggs,
You have a minute and 30 seconds, so feel free to to share more.
Sit under already the climate change action plan because it's a walk to school safety thing as well as a historical education bill. But as this Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day bill was introduced by Delegate Fennell on the House side, and it is just about to pass the House, and it's grown in sponsorship, and it came out of Mount Rainier Elementary and Thomas Stone Elementary participating in the National Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day event. We would not be the first state in the nation to adopt this as a commemorative day, where MSDE promotes it. The 24 local school systems promote it to their school buildings to plan for this day. All the resources exist from this national organization that Ruby Bridges herself founded. So the bill is moving swiftly. Senator Benson will take it through the Senate side. We'll go back to speak to the Senate committees, and I know Board Member Walker has said that if time aligns, that she would like to speak as well. And of course, we have Tim Meyer, who has been the lead advocate on this with Delegate Fennell. So what I'm asking for is if we can do a letter of support at this point.
Great. Thank you so much, Board Member Boozer-Strother. And I'll make sure that we can get that over to Dr. Moss as well, and John Tail, who is phenomenal in crafting letters for us. Board Member Walker.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm in support of that. I was telling Board Member Boozer-Strother that my mother was in the first integrated school in her area and in high school. And it's just such a phenomenal story to be able to kind of bring it to life and see it, especially when we have a living legend in Ruby Bridges, who, by the way, we can even get here for kicking off next year. I think we can start working on that. All right, that's not the piece I was going to say. I was actually going to ask Ms. Welsh if we could get some talking points. If you could work with maybe Shelby to help us get some talking points for next week, that would be really helpful, I think, for our scholars as well as for us to be able to craft the same message. And I'm specifically talking about now the two pieces of legislation we'll be talking about.
So are you talking
School
about?
construction, we're talking.
Oh,
So Shelby, I mean, I'm sure we have them. I just think it would be great if they had a sheet of paper with some bullets on it, literally, to be able to talk to those key pieces. But you can ask her what her vision is. It's not led by our committee, it's led by PGCPS. So whatever they want to do, I'm all in. But it might help as we kind of navigate different places and talk to different legislators.
you're talking about school construction. I can do that. It's
And
simple.
Ruby Bridges, which I think we already know. We can probably put those
Okay.
together ourselves. Thanks.
All right, colleagues, any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on to item 4.0, policies for first consideration. So there are 3 more items for discussion. Each member will have 2 rounds per item during the discussion, and each round will last 2.5 minutes. We're going to go to item 4.1, work plan review, incorporating a hybrid modality policy. So colleagues are present, 2 policies, policy 9364, participation in meetings electronically, and the rules of procedures. Mention a hybrid modality for board meetings, but neither provides details on how it operates or on participation in the open session. The question is, shall the committee add a new policy or revise policy 9354, rules of procedure, to include a hybrid modality to the work plan? Any discussion? I see Board Member Walker, and then
Yes, I will touch on this. I didn't see anything attached for that. So I definitely, and I will say that the chair did call and talk to me about it, that he wanted to kind of introduce it for a broader discussion. And maybe that's what we're talking about here, just to move it for a broader discussion. I'll say publicly that I do have concerns on moving to a hybrid for our business meetings. I think that just as elected officials to be inside of our building to conduct business where our public knows how to be there, to be able to have a voice in front of the board where it's not virtual, is value added for us. And that really is probably one meeting a month where we're asked to be in person for those. And the remaining, I'm all in for committee meetings or the budget hearings or our other requirements to be done virtually. But for our in-person meeting, I'm not a fan of having that as a model such as that. So I just wanted to say that, and then I don't know how the hybrid modality pieces in detail will happen, but I just wanted you guys to know at least where I was as we start the discussions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Board Member Booster Strother.
Yeah, thank you. I also think that for the, we are basically down to meeting in person for our
Board Member
don't
Booster,
meet
we can't hear you if you can hear me.
here.
No, you're in a really bad location. If you can, we heard probably 1% of what you shared. Can't hear you. Can see you, we can't hear you.
All right, I'm gonna come back.
Board Member Walker, did you have any, or Mrs. Welsh, did you have anything to share here as just additional context about the policy proposal?
The only thing I had shared with Dr. Moss was that because it's not on our work plan, that and normally what we do is we put it, then if there's something that someone wants, we end up putting it as one of the first items for the next year on the work plan. But that if he would, but he strongly would like, I think he would like to have it move forward immediately. And I said, then I would think that since the committee voted on the work plan for what policies they wanted to address this upcoming year, then I would think it would need to go back to the committee to have a conversation about whether or not they want to add it on for a policy to do for this year, and re-vote on that.
And now we're here. Okay, great. That's helpful context. Board Member Booster Strother.
Well, first I want to test the sound.
We can hear you, but maybe just keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to speak more to that policy that we are now down to about, 16 in-person meetings a year after, prior to the pandemic, the board met in person at the Sasser building and for budget hearings in high schools as many as 40 times a year. So I think the fact that we are down to so few meetings compared to historically, and we've moved so much to Zoom, that this board really needs to be committed to those in-person meetings. And anyone who runs for this office, the calendar is posted. There's no surprise. This calendar has not really changed for years and years and years. It's Thursday nights. So I do not, for the board business meetings, I would not support a hybrid model. Thank you.
Okay, and my additional, I could be supportive either way here. I do definitely understand the rationale that like we now to know that we have a lot fewer, actually more than half of the original meetings that we had in person is helpful context. Without additional information about why exactly we would want to have this kind of hybrid modality, I mean, and because we're voting here as a committee, so I would be outvoted if I went against it. But I'm probably likely gonna agree here. So I think Ms. Adelaide, can we please take a roll call vote?
I can give a little perspective on what he did share with me, if that's helpful for people's vote. I know how I'm voting, but I can share it with you in case you didn't know. One of the things he said was in the last meeting, I don't know if this is the only reason, but he did note in the last meeting, one of the board members was sick and couldn't come in and therefore couldn't vote. And as a result, he wants to, for items when people are sick or when there's something, that they do have that flexibility. And what I share with him is that flexibility is always great. However, then who's the decision maker? Is it always going to go to the chair to decide? And that just gets a little funny in how we play this role as a board member. So that's a piece of perspective that he shared with me. It might be other things as well, but that's just that piece.
And I think I had like a few seconds left, but I did just have a question like for Board Member Walker. If you can just share more about when you say like who's the decision maker. I wasn't clear about what you meant by that.
Oh yeah, for attendance. So or for if you're sick. So for instance, the scenario he gave me was a board member was sick. I wasn't at that meeting. So a board member was sick, they had to call in, but because you have to be present inside of our policy states that you have to be present for our board meetings. And so that person wasn't able to vote, right? And so if a person's sick in this modality, if you grant them, yes, you can come for this particular meeting, then who decides? If I say I'm sick 3 times, like who's the decision maker to say, yes, okay, you're able to do it? Somebody has to be able to say, yes, you can do it. So I was asking him, who's the approver in that situation? You understand where I'm going with that?
Slightly, but it looks like Board Member Boozer Strother, and I think my time's up, so I'm going to be respectful of that.
Oh, okay. It's just somebody has to decide if it's an excused absence or not, and then what does excuse look like for you to be able to have that modality?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Board Member Boozer Strother.
Debates here around that of, trust, that you're really sick and not on travel or whatever, there's just so many issues. But I think the bigger one is that our public, who watches us and who elected us and, who are very, and particularly we have some of our very engaged residents of this county who actually come to the physical building and watch the live cast. They want to see us together. I mean, and we just had, a very visible, negative scandal on this of a former board member. I mean, that is so top of mind for people. They do not want to see us shirking our responsibility. I mean, the one thing when you run or are, say in the past appointed that before you say yes is the schedule. It's posted on the website. It hasn't changed forever. So and you could miss up to 25% of meetings and still be a qualified board member, that you would not be seen as neglecting your duties. So I just think this is, not the right decision for this board.
All right. Well, I think unless there are any colleagues, are there any other questions? It looks like everybody is kind of clear where they are. So, Ms. Adelaide, please take a roll call.
Oh, sorry, just to be sure, what we're voting on is if in fact we allow this to be discussed at a board meeting. Is that what we're talking about?
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. I can repeat the question. So the question is, shall the committee add a new policy or revise policy 9364 rules of procedure to include a hybrid modality to the work plan? Ms. Adelaide, please take a roll call vote.
Ms. Boozer Strother?
No.
Mr. Briggs?
Aye.
Ms. Walker? We have 1 in the affirmative.
Okay. So the committee will not. So the question is, shall the committee postpone? Well, it didn't move forward, but the question is, shall the committee well, actually it didn't move forward. So I think that we're just not going to move forward with that. So thank you for that piece. We're going to move on to item 4.2, policy 0124 E-rate management. I recognize Mrs. Welsh for an overview of policy 0124 E-rate management.
Cindy, do you mind posting it, please? So policy E-rate management, when I pulled it up, I almost died. because I've never seen such an extensive policy with 20 million pieces of what should be happening in the policy. And so I contacted IT and I said, this looks like an administrative procedure and all these different things. And this was done back in 2011. And I'm like, is this even valid anymore? So it turns out that way back then, when I went to, and I don't even know, I think they said Superintendent Hyde, maybe, evidently we almost lost, I think for a short period of time, we must have lost our E-rate funding because we didn't really have a policy that laid out all the specifics and did not, they weren't really following anything either. So there was nothing to follow, but they didn't really follow the rules either. And so they went ahead and they did this policy, which I did share with them that this is important information. Much of there's a good part of it that's out of date now. It went through for me and double checked and took things that are no longer in existence out of the policy. But the fact is that much of it is still in the administrative procedure, and the administrative procedure is in great depth also. So I'll go through it of what we're looking at. So first of all, this is just your policy statement, which says, of course, that the board is committed to providing safe, productive, equitable learning environment for all students and work environment for staff, and that it includes a network infrastructure that has been designed to support effective academic and business practices for the school system. And then the fact that the board recognizes that the federal E-rate program supports bringing technology to the classroom at a discounted rate. So the purpose of the policy, if you can scroll down just a little bit, Cindy, the purpose is to provide guidelines for the required district-wide application for E-rate funding in lieu of various school applications. So to be clear, we at one point, I guess what I understand is that, again, way back when all the issues came up, individual schools were just applying for E-rate funding. And the first thing that was a problem was that we actually lost funding that we could have received because it was like just a school here and a school there, because it's all based on the number of students that are receiving farms. So some schools could do it because they had the right number of students receiving farms, some couldn't. So it's much more beneficial to the school system to be doing it as a school system. So that's the one thing in terms of making it district-wide, as well as that we do satisfy all the complex rules and compliance requirements associated with E-rate funding. So then I have provided some definitions because they are interjected throughout the policy. So we have the E-rate discount level, and this level is based on the school system's participation in the National Lunch Program for free and reduced price meals for farms. And then there is this FCC Form 471, which is very important. It's the key form used to assure schools and libraries receive appropriate universal service fund support and comply with eligibility requirements and take steps to use services effectively. And then if you scroll down further, we have also then the federal E-rate program. And this, under the E-rate program, schools may receive discounts for eligible services to include high-speed data / dark fiber, internet access, internal connections, and basic maintenance of internet connections. And overall, nationwide, E-rate annually provides $4.9 billion in technology discounts based on the percentage of students eligible for national school lunch programs at that's actually, I missed a period, at a school. So this is just across the country. So there's a lot of money going through this program that's really do support our, all the school systems across the country. And then as far as the high-speed data, dark data, this refers to, there's another type of the speed of the connection of the internet service. And then E is internal connections. That's the infrastructure equipment that allows for access to the internet. And then internet service is a service that allows users to connect to the internet and use applications like email and World Wide Web. And then USAC/SLD is the Universal Service Administration Company / Schools and Library Program. And it's designated by the Federal Communications Commission as the administrator of the Federal Universal Service Fund and Schools and Libraries Program. The SLD of the Universal Service Fund, commonly known as E-rate, is administered by the USAC. So that's a mouthful. Anyway, as we go down to as far as our standards and what we have to meet in order to ensure that we receive the funding, I have here the superintendent designee. So what you see, anything that's in the dark print is were things that I pulled from the old policy, and then the new is all the new information. So and I will tell you, I had a terrible time with my computer today and trying to line anything up. So I do apologize for numbers showing up in all crazy places. And I think when I send it to Cynthia, then it must have switched. These were in line when I first sent them. Anyway, the superintendent designee is responsible for ensuring that PGCPS meets the eligibility requirements for E-rate funding for the entire school system by meeting the USAC SLD select criteria. I do have here, I did add this language because this is very important overall for the entire school system, that no school, including charter schools, shall submit an independent application for E-rate funding requests. Then the superintendent designee, because one of the criteria for receiving this funding is that you certify that you are enforcing internet safety. That addresses the following. It has to address access by minors to inappropriate matter of the internet. This second, the safety and security of students using electronic mail, chat rooms, and other forms of direct electronic communications. And then unauthorized access, including so-called hacking and other unlawful activities by minors online. And then unauthorized disclosure, use, dissemination of personal information regarding students. And then, can you just scroll up 1 second? Thank you. And measures restricting students' access to materials harmful to them. So that comes directly from the law. So that's the first thing that has to be in place. And then secondly, the superintendent designee shall calculate the discount level that the school system is eligible to receive according to the appropriate calculated E-rate discount level. Again, that is really based on our number of farm students we have in each of the schools. Then the superintendent designee shall request discounts for the following eligible services. So these are the things that you can use the money for, basically. High-speed data / dark fiber, internet access, and scroll down, Cindy, internet connections, and basic maintenance of internal connections. And then the next thing is has to do with conducting open competitive bidding process to select a service provider. So although we already have a policy, the purchasing policy 3323, that definitely talks to the fact that there should be open and fair competitive bidding process. But everything you read in terms of this whole process of getting providers to based on this E-rate funding criteria, I felt that it was important to reiterate that the superintendent shall ensure that all procurements executed under the E-rate program must be open and fair, competitive bidding process, and that the quality of service and price must be the primary factors when selecting a vendor, which we already do. Additionally, the superintendent designee shall ensure that the E-rate competitive sealed bidding process, although similar to the process identified in AP 3323, meets the definitive differences for E-rate competitive sealed bidding process, which includes the bidding time, when the award can be made, and the mandatory requirement to submit various E-rate forms at various times. So I'm not giving you any of the details specific to that because that all is in the AP, but these are the requirements from a procurement perspective that have to be met if we are wanting to get the funds that we can receive through the E-rate management system. And then the second thing is the superintendent designee shall select the most qualified, cost-effective provider of desired products or services eligible for support with quality and price of the eligible goods and services as the primary factors. And all documentation pertaining to the competitive bidding process and vendor selection must be saved for 5 years from the last date to receive service. So these are all requirements, again, to receive the funding. Then if you scroll down further, the superintendent shall submit the FCC form 47-1 form for program support, which is in the definitions. But this FCC form is referenced over and over and over again, and it's a very important form. So I wanted to have it in the policy, just so that's the major thing in terms of getting this program support. And then I also included that the superintendent designee shall periodically evaluate the school system's technology initiatives and services to optimize funding opportunity and maximize participation in the E-rate program. And then, of course, the last thing is the superintendent is authorized to develop an administrative procedure to implement this policy. So are there any questions?
Okay, seeing no questions. I did have some comments, Mrs. Welsh. And this was around, so one, I want to just appreciate you for sharing that this was a pretty dated policy, because I mean, we've definitely been through 2 administrations since that's changed, and the federal law that was actually mentioned in the old policy, No Child Left Behind, has been away for some time.
Right.
That brought some concerns for me because I wondered if that was the board policy that they were operating under, and some of those requirements came from what was mentioned in No Child Left Behind, which was been replaced by the Every Student Succeeds Act, as you know. It made me concerned about what the IT department was doing for some time. And then I was wondering what your thoughts are around whether whether it would be beneficial to have someone from the department come to share what they've been doing up to this point, given that the things have changed significantly. I know you talked to them, so can you just share more if you think that's a good idea or what you've talked to them about?
So the last thing I said was, so don't be surprised if I call you back up and I see if you can't possibly come to a policy and governance committee, because this is not an area that I have expertise in. And if there's any questions, you all would be the best to have the conversation with the committee members so they can get better clarity on it. So I
Okay.
can certainly ask them to come.
Okay. And then I did want to say, like, the other piece I had a concern about was just, I mean, this could be a quick turnaround for them, because I know that when we kind of vote on the policies, the offices have to get up to speed on changes. So that'd be a question I want to ask them as well. In addition to the fact that who knows if the FCC will even be in existence next year. I mean, at this point, right, agencies are being cut left and right or downside. So those are all things that I know as we're making these changes, these are implications around the policy.
So just so you know, interestingly enough, the administrative procedure is actually, they just reviewed it recently, and and we didn't even ask them to, they just did it, and it's pretty much up to date. So, so they are really, even though the policy was out of date, they were moving forward on what they need to do currently, mainly because, we don't want to lose that funding, but I definitely will ask them.
Okay, that's great to know. Board Member Boozer Struther.
Yeah, thank you. I was also going to add that I think we've seen some unfortunate articles about some introductions to actually cut E-rate or end E-rate that would have major harm to libraries and school systems. So, Vice Chair Briggs is definitely right about that. That this is another one of those things, and that we may look very different soon. And I was just searching through our regular business meetings, because we do vote on the E-rate contract on a regular basis, right? So I was just sort of looking at when we do that annually and some of the text in there, but yeah, I agree. I would like to hear from the experts in the system, and they could also give us some idea of what they're seeing with changes in the law that might be coming. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Board Member Walker.
Just a comment, not a question. I just want to be mindful that with this administration, there's so much happening every single day. So I think that we just need to be mindful of creating something that's going to be everlasting. And if something's demolished, then we just let it go. But versus crafting it in anticipation of what might happen. What we recognize is that minute by minute, things are happening in this administration, and we can't let it shut us down or stop us in what we need to do for our scholars. That's it. Thanks.
Appreciate that. All right. So the question is, shall the committee postpone policy 0124 E-rate management to the next policy and governance committee meeting? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Adelaide, please take a roll call vote.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Willis-Struther,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
3 in the affirmative.
All right, there are 3 in the affirmative. Policy 0124 E-rate management will be postponed until the next policy and governance committee meeting for further consideration. We're now going to move on to item 5.0, policies for second consideration. There are none this evening. And item 6.0, policies for third consideration. There are also none this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one item for consideration. So item 6.1, new policy developing curriculum documents for instructional programs in elementary and secondary schools. The question is, shall the committee recommend new policy developing curriculum documents for instructional programs in elementary and secondary schools to the full board for public comment or consideration? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Adelaide, please take a roll call vote.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Ms. Bullis-Strother,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
3 in the affirmative.
Right there, 3 in the affirmative. New policy developing curriculum documents for instructional programs in elementary and secondary schools will be recommended to the full board for public comment consideration. We're now going to move on to adjournment. I, the vice chair, informed the public that the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will be on March 25th, 2024. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information updates. I want to thank you all for a great discussion in attendance this evening. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further discussion, the time is now 6:41. The March 11, 2025 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thanks, you all. Take care.
Thank you. Hey, Robin,
Can we stop the recording?